Welcome back to the Conservative Rebel podcast. As you may have noticed, it's been several months since the last episode that I put out, but that's not because I've gotten burnt out on politics, which is impossible, at least in my case, but because I started a Substack under my real name, the Evan Dish Substack, where I've been posting weekly articles relating to politics, very similar topics to what we have discussed on this show. And from now on, that will be probably the primary channel through which I put out my work. So, if you would like to get weekly stuff from me, weekly articles delivered straight to your inbox for free, then I'd highly recommend going over to evanjdish.substack.com, where you can subscribe by inserting your email address. And I'm not done with this podcast, obviously, as you can see. I'm still kind of deciding what I'm going to do with it. Chances are I'm going to be sharing a lot of my articles that I post, or extensions of those articles, and kind of talking about the same thing on here. But anyway, before we got started today, I just thought I'd let you guys know all of that. Today we're going to talk about something I recently posted an article about, which is America's real founding principles that your teacher hid from you. Because the same liberals who are constantly accusing you and accusing Trump and accusing people who think like you of violating America's founding principles would be absolutely horrified to discover what those principles actually were. Both liberals and moderate conservatives love to appeal to the founding values whenever they're faced with an opinion more than the allowable 1-inch right of center. If you criticize unlimited mass democracy, argue that moral standards should be enforced, or even claim that, shudder, America is a nation and not an idea, then you'll quickly discover what I mean. You'll quickly be showered in platitudes about we the people and the Constitution and rights and freedom and Thomas Jefferson. You'll be politely informed that your views are un-American and betray the values our country was founded on. And the worst part of it all is that people like this aren't even being disingenuous. These people genuinely believe that George Washington's political views were similar, if not identical, to those of Martin Luther King Jr. They genuinely think John Adams and John Cornyn's political philosophies were the same. Because in the public school system, you're fed one of two American creation myths. You might be told that the Founding Fathers were evil supervillains who founded this country on slavery and genocide. This is now the preferred narrative of the left. This is now what children are taught all across the country. Or you might get the other comic book version of history, equally absurd, where the Founding Fathers were starry-eyed egalitarian romantics on some ideological crusade to create a utopia of equality. This is the patriotic myth that most people above 30 were taught. This is the rah-rah, waving the pom-poms. America was founded on modern liberal conceptions of multiculturalism and getting along and all that. The first myth will make you a cultural Marxist, and the second myth will make you an annoying moderate conservative, quote-unquote, by our very, very low standards of what even qualifies as a conservative in 2026, who likes to police right-wing thought. And most Americans above a certain age were taught this second myth. They emerged from the public school system convinced that the founders started our country as some experiment in democracy dedicated to equality, popular government, good vibes, and rock and roll. Just like that one tall, skinny guy with the beard and the top hat said that one time in that one speech their teachers made them memorize a few sentences from. Not only are both of these myths false, both of these myths are laughably false. Ironically, the very founding values liberals like to accuse right-wingers of betraying are far closer to the values of whoever they're criticizing than their own values. Because the United States was not founded as a secular liberal democracy. It was founded as a federation of openly and explicitly Christian states, theocratic states, quote unquote, many with established taxpayer-funded churches. There's one example. That meant that, whether you agreed with its theology or not, a portion of your taxes was taken from you and spent on whatever denomination your state government chose, be it Anglicanism or Congregationalism, or something in between. If a state government in 2026 did so much as just declare itself officially Christian, and Christianity its state religion, liberals would have a thermonuclear meltdown. This was a step way beyond that, where the state governments were encoding a specific denomination with a controversial theology many Christians disagreed with into law. So much for separation of church and state. But it went beyond that. Most states had religious qualifications for anyone who wanted to hold public office. Newly elected statesmen were required to swear an oath professing their faith in the Christian religion. Here, for example, is the oath the state of Delaware required. Quote, "I do profess faith in God the Father, and in Jesus Christ his only Son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed forevermore, and I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration," end quote. On top of that, the states had laws forcing Christian Sunday observance. Businesses were required to close down, work, travel, and other activities were restricted, and in some cases it was even illegal to refuse to attend church services. Most shockingly of all to modern sensibilities, the American states enforced anti-blasphemy laws. It was illegal to slander Christianity or Christ, on pain of harsh fines or even imprisonment. In short, the Founding Fathers weren't at all shy about strictly enforcing not only morality, but Christian morality, the morality of a particular controversial religion, and its standards at the state level up to and including imprisoning heretics for public speech. And this isn't even getting to the quasi-aristocratic society America was. The extremely strict voting restrictions it had. Only 6% of people could vote in the first presidential election. The founders' explicit ethno-cultural religious nationalism and conception of American identity, explicit in the Federalist Papers, and a million other things we don't have time to discuss. You can agree or disagree with any of this, but this is what the founders actually believed in, like it or not. These are the real founding values of America. This is how government was actually run in the early republic. Sorry. So by any modern liberal standards, the Founding Fathers didn't remotely create an egalitarian, democratic, secular government. This was, by our standards, a far-right theocratic society. The Founding Fathers, in short, apparently betrayed the ideals of the Founding Fathers. So by the very standards of the people claiming right-wingers are betraying our founding values, the founding values are evil. So we're betraying evil values, apparently. So the next time a liberal accuses you of violating our founding principles, remember what those founding principles actually were. And there's actually a recent example of this. Very recent and relevant example. The Texas Board of Education just voted to make Bible passages required reading in public schools. The same public schools that now have the Ten Commandments hanging on their classroom walls, thanks to the law Governor Greg Abbott signed last year. Now, this requirement doesn't assign anywhere close to the entire Bible to be read. It just requires this: very short passages from the single most influential work of literature in the history of Western civilization will be included in the literature students in that civilization read. What a senseless outrage. Whether you're a Christian or not, it's just an objective fact that the Bible has shaped our country and civilization more than any other book. You might go so far as to argue that the Bible is even more historically important than To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, to be clear, I'm not arguing that. That's a very radical position. I'm just saying you could argue that if you wanted to. Not that anyone wants to, though, because that would be absurd. None of this, of course, stopped the godless liberals' inevitable meltdown. They were very worried last year about kids learning that it's bad to kill people and steal their stuff from the Ten Commandments posters, as we covered way back then. And now they're even more concerned about fascist propaganda like the parable of the prodigal son and the infamously violent and radical Sermon on the Mount being taught in schools. But though the left may hate the Bible and simple tenets of basic morality, they've managed to convince a lot of people who don't, including alleged conservatives and Christians, into taking their side on this. And the first objection liberals use is, of course, the founding principles objection that we just talked about. Reading the Bible in school is a violation of separation of church and state, quote unquote. It destroys the religious freedom guaranteed by the First Amendment, allegedly. In fact, in one protest against this new requirement, left-wing activists solemnly held up gravestone-shaped signs saying, R.I.P. Religious Freedom, December 15th, 1791 to June 22nd, 2026. These people believe religious freedom just died because kids in Texas are going to read a couple Bible verses. But they apparently think, at the same time, that religious freedom was alive and well in 1791, when taxpayers were forced to tithe to state churches, swear a Christian religious oath to hold any public office or position of authority, and were thrown in prison for blasphemy and heresy. That's apparently what they think. Either that, or they don't know anything at all about history, or anything at all about the Constitution, or anything at all about politics. Which they don't. That's the real reason. They're stupid. Requiring a few Bible passages in public schools is obviously child's play compared to that. Now, these are all indisputable historical facts. Everything we covered is. All of this really did happen for decades, under the First Amendment, without anyone ever claiming it was unconstitutional. So in short, either these liberals don't know what the First Amendment means, or the people who wrote the First Amendment don't know what the First Amendment means. I mean, didn't know what the First Amendment means. You can tell me which of those options is more likely. But because these people are completely historically illiterate and know absolutely nothing about the Constitution, this irony totally escapes them. So, as we already know, the argument that this violates the Constitution or religious freedom totally collapses under the slightest scrutiny. But the other objection is that teaching the Bible in schools privileges Christianity over other religions. And this isn't a constitutional or legal objection, this is a philosophical objection. It's wrong to privilege one religion over others by the government, and this requirement privileges Christianity over other religions. And this one has more meat to it, so it requires a more delicate and nuanced response. So what that it privileges Christianity, the historic religion of our nation and the largest one by far in Texas, over other religions? As we've already established, there's nothing unconstitutional or illegal about doing that. Oh, it's just wrong to do that? Why? Can you give me a reason why it's wrong to privilege one religion over others? And you can't just say that. You can't rephrase it again and again. Oh, it's up. Why is it wrong? And if you asked most liberals these questions, they couldn't answer it. They've just heard that. They've been told that. So the argument liberals are left with for this is that privileging Christianity is wrong because it makes Hindus and atheists and Muslims feel bad. Here, for example, is liberal non-denominational pastor Zach W. Lambert. Here's his explanation of why he's upset that kids will be briefly exposed to the religion he claims to believe in at school, God forbid. Here's what he said on X, quote, "If you're a Christian genuinely wondering why it's bad for the state of Texas to require Bible study in public schools, imagine how you'd feel if your family lived in New York City and Mamdani required Quran study in public schools. You can't require the Bible to be read in schools because it would be bad if the Quran was read in schools. Oh, you're happy that something you agree with is being taught in schools? Well, I bet you wouldn't be happy if something you disagreed with was being taught in schools." You caught us on that one, Pastor Zach. It's true that it would make us mad if the Quran was taught in schools. And that's not because we're hypocrites. It's because we actually think the Bible is true and the Quran is false. And education should be based on truth and not falsehood. Kids should be taught true things and not false things. Am I going too fast? Is this over your head, Zach? As a Christian pastor, I sure hope he believes those things too. So it's not at all inconsistent for a Christian who believes the Bible is true to support teaching kids the Bible and not the Quran. It's a perfectly consistent application of the universal principle that education should be based on the pursuit of truth and not falsehood. No institution can ever be fully neutral because every institution is composed of people with biases, and that includes public schools. Public schools will always teach some ideology, some religion, some worldview. The second Christianity, the Bible, and prayer was kicked out of the classroom in the 1960s, liberalism became that worldview, and in the past couple decades, all-out cultural Marxism took even liberalism's place. Schools will always teach some kind of religion. The only question is whose. And taking your own side on that is not hypocrisy. Instead, it shows that you actually believe what you claim to. Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Conservative Rebel. If you liked it, please remember to subscribe and share it. And most importantly, remember to check out the Evan Dish Substack, where I have a bunch of other articles archived and all ready for you to read. And I post additional articles every week, like I said. That is the primary place you'll be able to find me, so I hope to see you all there.